if you're in the Google Meet, make sure you're signing into the Nearpod. We're all almost there. If you're having trouble, as always, just let me know. I can try and troubleshoot, but we do want to get moving with this. So again, here's my question. 2 cups of dry rice serves 6 people. What is the constant of proportionality of people per cup? So I'll flip this screen, or I'll flip the slide, just so that those that have been in here and on time can start talking and working. So it's the same question. 2 cups, 6 people. How many people per cup? I love that those first answers that came through had the unit. We want to make sure that when we're doing these constant of proportionality problems, number 1, we're paying attention to the way it's worded because that helps us figure out how to divide. And number 2, we always want that unit attached so that we know what we're talking about. So yeah, if it says people per cup, that language directly tells us how to divide. People divided by cups. So 6 people divided by 2 cups gives me 3 people per cup. Awesome. I like these that are coming through, going ahead and explaining 6 divided by 2 equals 3. A lot of us are writing that. Awesome. So now with that knowledge, 3 people per cup, I'm going to flip the slide so we can fill out a table. Hit start. So now you'll see that it has 2 cups for 6 people. So go ahead and fill in the rest of the numbers. How many people for 1 cup? How many people for 3 cups? 12 cups, 43 cups. I'm sorry if you can hear the traffic outside. If it is really distracting, please let me know. 6th period once had to tell me that the birds were chirping way too loud. They couldn't even hear me. I will shut the window if I need to. So then our goal for today is to talk about, be very comfortable with how to fill this out, and then start getting into how can I write an equation to represent this table? Or what if I don't specifically know how many cups of rice? How can I use variables to talk about this type of a problem? Careful with our mental math though. See us all. I keep seeing us doing the right thing, which is the main goal for me. But little tiny mistakes here and there. 30 seconds just to finish up. I see some of you done and now you're going in and showing your work. That is perfect. And I also see that some of us that were geared towards doing scale factors last week when we started doing this are now showing that pattern left to right, which is the main goal here. A couple more seconds, 10 seconds, and your timer's going to go off. I'll share out some answers. Remember that if you're working and you're done, to actually hit the submit button so that I can share it out. If you never hit submit, it's just going to be floating. Sometimes I like some of your answers and can't actually share them. Okay, so you guys did really well on this. We recognized on the previous slide that my constant of proportionality was 3 people per cup. So that meant we took the number of cups, multiplied it by 3, and you all did that. And again, just be careful. I saw some mistakes here, writing 3 times 3, 12 times 3. So just be careful with your mental math. I can see that you're doing the right thing, but you're getting the wrong answers. So the next slide is going to ask us a question where, what if I don't know what that value is in the left? What if it's some unknown number of cups? How can I figure out a rule that I can always use to answer a problem like this? So it says, what if I don't know how many cups there are? What rule can we follow to find the number of cups, the number of people for any amount of cups? So think about that. Think about the work that you just did in that table. I'm going to flip this, and you're going to see another table. This time, the only part that's missing is down at the bottom. And there's not a number, it just says the letter X. So X stands for any number of cups of rice. So I don't know what it is, but how can I write a rule in that box where I can figure out the number of people for any number of cups of rice. Focus today is talking about equations and variables. So first thing we want to understand is that X that's written on that left side just stands for any number of cups of rice. Could be 3, could be 10, could be anything. So how do I come up with just a generic baseline rule to fill in my table? See a lot of you writing similar things. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share this. So you can see on this student's work that she wrote that arrow showing that all we did from left to right was multiply by 3. So if I don't know what that number of cups of rice is and I'm using an X to represent it, I'm taking X and multiplying it by 3. A lot of you also wrote that same thing, X3 times 3. I am going to be a little bit particular about how we write our answers for things like this. So we want to be in the habit of putting that number out front. So this is the same thing that you all just wrote, X times 3 or X3. What it is telling me is that X is any number of cups of rice. If I take that number and multiply it by 3, it's going to give me the number of people. So the way I show that in an expression, that's what that's called, is to just say 3 times X, but I don't need any symbol in between. I don't need the multiplication sign. I just say 3X to show that I'm taking the number of cups of rice times 3. But if I don't know what that number is, I'm using my X to represent it. We're going to look at another scenario. Now we're talking about spring rolls. So a recipe says that 6 spring rolls will serve 3 people. What is the constant of proportionality of people per roll? So again, we have to be very careful with how we read it, how it is asking us to find the constant of proportionality, and what our answer is going to be. So 6 spring rolls will serve 3 people. So I'm going to push us, you're going to see the same question. How many people per roll is that? Oh, it's a stumper. And now hopefully we're not playing follow the leader. Remember to pay particular attention to the language. How many people per roll? How does that tell you how you're supposed to divide? Remember all of that talk we did last week with paying attention to fractions show up, how to handle that. So far, I do not see any correct answers. So some of you, I'll reiterate that. Some of you are writing something correct. So you're saying rolls per person, but pay attention that the question is asking how many people per roll. So although it is correct to say 2 rolls per person, because I'm taking 6 rolls divided by 3 people, that's not what the question is saying. The question is saying how many people can eat 1 spring roll. And I noticed this answer down here saying 0.5, which is impossible. So each person would get 2 spring rolls. Okay, so that is true. If we look up at the language of the problem, how many people per roll tells us to take the number of people divided by the number of spring rolls. So if I have 3 people divided by 6, that does not give you 2. 3 divided by 6 gives you 0.5 or 1/2. So that means a half of a person can eat 1 spring roll. So it doesn't really make sense to us, but you can think about it in terms of you could eat it and you're only going to be half full. It's not going to be enough for you. But you have to pay attention that your constant of proportionality here is not 2. Again, if you're saying 2 rolls per person, that is fine, but it's not answering the question because the question is saying people per roll. So I do agree with this person here who is saying half of a person per roll. Yes, exactly. All right. So that being said, you're going to have another table to fill out. This time you're gonna see that bottom row with your variable. So I need to figure out how many people for one spring roll. If I have 10 of them, how many is it gonna feed? If I have 16 of them, how many will it feed? 25, but then you have the letter N. N is saying, what if you don't know the number? How can you write a roll for any number of spring rolls? So think about what you did to fill out the entire table and use that to fill in the bottom part. And again, as you're working through here, think about what we talked about on that other collaborate screen. Your constant of proportionality is not 2. Thank you. And once you fill in all of the numbers, how can you write your roll? When you see variables and equations, they're just shortened versions of rules that we can follow, or shortened versions of patterns. Again, be careful with our math. Think about what we talked about on that other page. We're not dividing by 3, it's not 1/3. 6 to 3, we're cutting that in half. Take another minute just to finish up, so I'll share out the answers. See really good stuff, I'll share this one out. If you're still working, that is okay. But again, we can see that pattern here where we're cutting everything in half, okay? 6 divided by 2 is 3. So you can see this student went ahead and cut all of these numbers by dividing them by 2, which is the same thing as multiplying it by 1/2. So I really like that we're even paying attention down here at the bottom to write that expression. We're not using the number 2 because the 2 is not my number of constant of proportionality. So again, when we're filling in that bottom row, if you see that variable is saying, tell me what I do if I have no idea how many spring rolls I have, but I need to figure out how many people. So what the right side of that is saying is that you're going to take 1/2 and multiply it by how many rolls you have. You did really well on that. So now we have a new problem. A plane flew at a constant speed between Denver and Chicago. It took the plane 1.5 hours to fly 915 miles. So 1.5 hours, 915 miles. What is the plane's speed? So I didn't use particular language here. I didn't use the word per because that normally tells us how to divide. People per cup, spring roll per person. I specifically didn't use that language here because if you think about what a speed is, it in itself tells you how to divide. So I'm gonna let you think about that. If it went 915 miles in 1.5 hours, what is the plane's speed? Think about what you say whenever you're in the car driving down the road. How fast are you going? What is that unit that's attached? And I love the units that are in the answers. So again, this problem didn't come out and say how many people per cup, and it didn't use that language of per. But you guys are using your knowledge of knowing that talking about a speed is miles per hour. So that in itself tells you how to divide. Take your miles, divide by your hours. You're doing 915 divided by 1.5, and you're getting 610 miles per hour. So make sure that you're including that unit, not just miles. Whenever you're dividing, you're including both of those. So units for constant of proportionality always have both units in the problem. 915 miles divided by 1.5 hours is 610 miles per hour. Good. And I like the pictures that some of you had. Just mentioning that. So we're going to see another table, just like we did. Find the distance. After 1 hour, how far are you going to go? 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and then again, write your role. So after we fill in this table, we're going to talk about changing that bottom part just a portion to make it an entire equation. And I saw some of you doing that back on the first slide that we did, which was awesome. So we're going to just talk about how do we write an equation and what does the equation mean? Yes, go ahead, my dear. And if you feel like you're confident in your variable part down below, your next step is just to have the right notation. You want your number first, variable second. Okay, so if you're still working, I'll share this out because we seem to be doing really well with this. So that means we can move a little bit quicker. So again, we talked about the constant of proportionality on the previous page. 1 hour, I go 610 miles. So then you're all going ahead and taking everything on that left-hand side times 610 and getting everything on that right-hand side. So then at the bottom, if it's any number of hours, I can take that number of hours t and multiply it by 610. So that is exactly correct, t times 610. But again, we want to start now. This is correct, so I'm not saying anything bad about it. But our next step is to just make sure our notation and we're just writing it correctly. So that would just mean put that number in front of the variable. So it's just a quick flip. So I get 610 times t. And again, what that says is that 610 times the number of hours always gives you the distance. The next slide is going to ask us, how can I write an entire equation for this? An equation means I'm doing something equal to something else. So we're going to think about that for a little bit. So I'm going to flip this slide. Same problem that we have. And then we can see in this box, that is my equation. When we're talking about an equation, we always want to talk about how do I get that right side of the table? So in this example, I'm talking about distance. So if I think about it just in terms of words and the patterns that we were doing, distance is equal to 610 times whatever time it is. So then when I write an equation, all I need to do is take all of those words that we say out loud and use symbols to represent them. So I'm using the letter D to represent distance. And again, that's the variable on the right side of the table. So D equals 610. The number in your equation is always the constant of proportionality times time. And I'm just using the letter T to represent it. And that's always the variable on the left side of the table. So that's the pattern you're always going to follow when you're writing these equations. The right side is equal to your constant of proportionality times the left side. And then the letters are just shortened versions of those words that we say. You can use whatever letters that you want. I'm going to show you another slide. This is going to be our last. No. Bakery uses 8 tablespoons of honey for 10 cups of flour. What is the constant of proportionality of cups per tablespoon? So we're going to talk about it again. Pay attention to your language. 8 tablespoons for 10 cups. How many cups per tablespoon? Check your math a little bit, just a little. Again, pay attention to the language. Cups per tablespoon specifically says take the number of cups divided by the number of tablespoons. So those of you that are saying 1.25, that is correct. 10 cups divided by 8 tablespoons, 1.25 tablespoons per cup. Again, make sure that if you're saying 1.25, you're also including the unit. Cups per tablespoon. Make sure you're writing it in the right order. So that's my constant of proportionality, 1.25. fill in your table and then try to write the full equation. So just like I showed you with the distance problem, how can you write your full equation? How can you find any number of cups? So fill in that table, but then also answer that question underneath. Write an equation representing the proportional relationship in the table. So we went from filling out the table to writing the rule. Now we're taking that rule and making it into the equation. Think about the plane problem that I showed you. When it uses the language of write an equation, you always need to say the right side is equal to something times the left side. Equations have to have that equal sign. So if you fill in your table, try to write the equation underneath that table. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share this answer. So we're all confident and good with filling in the table. I can see that. We're taking the constant of proportionality we just talked about. You all took the left side of that table and multiplied it by 125 to get the right side. So then when it says questions like this, write an equation representing the proportional relationship. Your equations always want to look like this. You're not dividing anything. You're not doing anything. It always is going to be in this format. Yeah, that's fine, Jordan. It's always the right side of your table. So I'm talking about the cups is equal to your constant of proportionality, which is 125, times whatever is on the left side, which would be your tablespoons of honey. It always follows that same pattern. Right side equals left side times the constant of proportionality. If you're stuck on figuring out how to write your equation, think about it in terms of words. I found my number of cups by taking the tablespoons and multiplying it by 125. Once you have that sentence in your head, shorten all of those words. C equals 125T. C for cups, T for tablespoons. I'm gonna put one more problem on your screen. This you're just gonna work through on your own. Once you feel like you're done and you answered all of the questions, you're gonna fill in the table, write an equation, and then answer that question down below. So just take some time to work through this, come into the Google chat, ask for help. That bottom question is more difficult. But you need the table, you need the equation. Again, always in that same format. Right side equals constant of proportionality times the left side. And then answer the question down below. How many inches of snow will fall after 1 day? Make sure we're answering all the questions. Fill in the table, write an equation representing the proportional relationship, and then figure out how many inches of snow will fall after 1 day. So I see some of you submitting it with just the table being done. There's 3 parts to this question. Table, write the equation, how many inches of snow after 1 day. If you've submitted your answer and you have not answered the other two questions, please go back in to edit. There's 3 parts here. I know. Normally our winters now just get really cold. Mm-hmm. I agree. Sometimes. I don't always like cleaning my car off. You don't have to worry about that. I know. Yeah, make sure you have all of those. I see some of you getting awesome, great answers, and some of you are still just submitting it when the table's done. But there are 2 more parts to finish up. Table, equation, how much snow will there be after 1 day? We might get it. A while ago. It's been like 60 degrees almost. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to give you until 8:45 to finish up whatever you're writing. I see really, really good answers. So if you're done, hang tight until the minute is up, and then we'll talk about it. You guys did really well on this. I tried to put in that 3rd question to trick you, but no one has really fallen for the trick, which is good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share out the answer. Table, exactly correct. You guys noticed that the part that was filled in, 2 to 4, go ahead, Elijah, means that my constant of proportionality is 2 inches per hour. So then you use that, 1 hour is 2 inches. If it's 1 inch, then it's half an hour. 6.5 times 2 is 13. So then we went ahead and said, well, if I have any number of hours, I can multiply that by 2. Okay, so my equation here, we want to just be careful with how we're writing it. And I know equations are brand new for us, so it's going to take a minute just to get used to the way that we're writing. Okay, so talking about question number 2, if you're stuck on how to write your equation, think about it in terms of words first. The snowfall was equal to 2 times the number of hours. So S from the right side equals 2 times the left side, which I use the letter X to represent it. So then how many inches of snow will fall after 1 day? You all pretty much realized that if I was talking about hours in my table, then you had to go ahead and figure out how many hours were in a day. So I said 1 day is equal to 24 hours. So then 2 times 24 gave you 48 inches. Okay, you guys did really well on that. Again, a lot of what the issues I see are just with how you're writing it, which is exactly where we want to be right now. So you just want to remember that your table, you want to put that number first. And then if you're stuck on writing the equations, think about that pattern that you're doing. What is happening to get the number on the right-hand side? Think about it as a sentence first, and then just shorten all of those words that you're saying. All right, that is our last problem. You have 1 Edpuzzle video posted, so you have 10 minutes, plenty of time to get that done and out of the way. There's no practice problems. All that you're responsible doing for the next 10 minutes and for 9th period is the Edpuzzle, and then continue to work on that scaling a recipe project. So I will be up in the Google Meet during 9th period for any questions you have about any of that. Even if you're not having questions about the actual math, but something's not working with your program, come in and I'll try and troubleshoot to figure it out. Okay, but you are free to sign out of the Google Meet, get started on your Edpuzzle, and then continue working on that project during 9th period. You have today and tomorrow to finish that project. It's going to be due at the end of the day tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Maybe.